Why, hello there, Knifestyle here. I hope this video finds you well. Today I'm bringing you a summary of a knife I've done a full review on. The full review will be linked down in the description. This is like take number 8 now. I'm having some real issues today. Just not being satisfied with anything. But, Molsect Shuttle. The full review has full specs. This is not going to have that. Just to start things off, Molsect knives. Smaller, sort of semi-budget brand. At least that's what they seem to be doing. You can sort of see the design elements carrying over between these two. This is sort of the siblings of the old-fashioned and the Shuttle. Molsect is going to be slightly, I guess, more expensive than maybe some of their contemporaries because they are a smaller brand, so I'm going to factor that in when I talk about the price point. Just be aware that yeah, if you go with one of the bigger companies, they may be offering something that is very competitive or comparable to, say, this knife or this knife for maybe a bit less. But you're getting a very dramatic and unique design here, and Molsect seems to be leaning into that with some of their stuff, so I'm happy with it. I also want to say that this knife, while it's already got the full review and the summary up, if you care to find it, is sort of the inverse of this one. They have similar design elements, but where this knife doesn't seem like it should work because hard angles and weird chamfers and flat scales, and this knife with the contoured and the different chamfers looks like it should. It's kind of the opposite. This one is super comfortable and makes no sense at all. It just sort of, everything falls in perfect position. This one, in my opinion, has some slight dropping of the ball, shall we say, in its ergos, which is very unusual and very unexpected. We'll get there in just a minute, but let's just cover what the knife is. You've got a trailing recurve blade. Definitely not everyone's thing, but you can get to the tip pretty well because it's got the belly moved back on this one. It's much more usable than a lot of trailing point, and the recurve is, if you actually just sort of take out the heel here, the recurve is not as pronounced as it kind of looks. If you don't mind losing that little bit of heel, you could probably sharpen this on just a standard inch stone on a fixed angle system. You're going to lose some of the recurve, but you're going to probably lose that on the recurve, on any recurve. This one is just going to be a little bit more cooperative to sharpen than one that has a really, really pronounced curve into it. So, it's not as maybe intimidating as it looks, but it is what it is. It's certainly not going to be everyone's tastes. I think it's worthwhile getting occasionally just because it's definitely an interesting blade. There's no doubt about that. So, that aside, 14C28 blade and blade steel. Satin finish, though it's got a bit more reflectivity than a lot of satins. It's quite nice. We've got aluminum handles, contoured, backspacer, probably aluminum as well. Titanium pocket clip. It is a crossbar lock knife on bearings. It's doing some of the hallmarks that it's sort of just very not overtly budget, not overtly premium kind of boxes that it's ticking. So, sharpening tool and plunge grind, moving on from there, I guess. See, I'm just having issues with my transitions or something today, I don't know. Sharpening tool and plunge grind is amazing. Gave you a ton of life. The stop pins are attached to the blade, and of course the crossbar lock itself, which are very nice touches. Love seeing housed, attached to the blade stop pins. Bleh. See? Yeah, really having issues here. But the grind is surprisingly thin, considering it's not all that tall. It's not all that high up. A lot of companies can learn from this. Just because you're not doing, like, you're doing a pretty low saber height grind kind of thing, you're really not necessarily stuck with a thick geometry. This is pretty darn thin. It is a little thicker at the tip, but that's perfectly reasonable. But as you can see, it's still pretty darn thin out there. Very, very good geometry overall. The edge, reasonable. It came pretty good. Probably a little bit better than some of the ones I've been seeing lately, but not amazing. There's only been a handful recently that have really stood out, but it's good. Molsect logo here. Other than that, and the 14C28N blade is pretty minimal. Molsect logo is small and on the flats, like seeing that. Jimping on the spine. It is tactile. It offers maybe just a tiny bit of grip, but not much. This is a thumb stud knife only. Of course, you can use the crossbar as a deployment, but thumb studs. Both stick out a little bit proud, which is nice to see. And these thumb studs are really, really good, actually. They feel good. They grip you decently. Excellent there. One of the showstoppers on this thing is the bearings. The bearings in this thing are well above what you normally see in budget knives. They are super smooth. And the entire action and fit and finish, in fact, everything about this knife, other than a few hiccups, basically you have a hiccup and then everything around it and everything up that's part of that part of its execution is top notch. As you can see, it even though I'm not really like holding this thing, that was a bad example, but it really just, it's kind of pulls itself in very nicely. It's got a satisfying pull to it, and it's ultra smooth. Terrible examples, terrible descriptions. See what I mean? Just nothing's coming out the way I want it to. Moving on from that, you have steel liners, full steel liners. They are skeletonized. A lanyard loop for those who care. It is kind of being prioritized over the pocket clip, though this end of the pocket clip is not a problem whatsoever. It is pretty darn comfortable in hand. I like it. This end we'll talk about in a minute. T8 all the way around. Every single thing, including the thumb studs. T8s. Love that. Wonderful design there. Captured pivot. If you can look in there, you can see that there are 4 little holes there. Those are the... Come on. Where are you? There you are. They are the holes that the Omega Spring hooks into for the crossbar. It is adjustable. If, for anybody who didn't know, the Omega Spring right here comes off the bar, loops around, pops into a hole. That's what gives the tension for the bar pushing it forward. The adjustable nature is when you move it into the closest hole or further up forward towards the bar, the more compressed the spring is in a natural state, and therefore the more tension it normally has, which usually results in needing to build up a little bit more tension before the blade throws, because the Omega Spring is essentially acting as the detent on a crossbar lock knife, and usually a great element. However, these springs are woefully underpowered. They definitely need to be stronger. In fact, I'd say that this knife really needs and deserves a version 2, where this, and at least one other change, just absolutely has to be made, because it could be really, really stellar if they do. And these springs are definitely one of them. It is just, they're not strong enough. I've moved mine all the way up. I have taken it apart. Everything's perfectly fine. And it went back perfectly great. No play with the crossbar lock, no up and down, no side to side. Perfect centering. Top notch. Like I said, the fit and finish here, there are elements of the fit and finish, most of the fit and finish, in fact. Great. Like, definitely above your average budget knife, even. Which makes sense, but for the price, which, again, we'll get there. But, yeah. The weak springs definitely kind of drag it down just a little bit. It might not bother you, but it, let's see. Yeah, it can definitely come out. In fact, I can get it to deploy completely. These springs need to be stronger. Maybe mine's a fluke. I can only judge based on what I have before me, and that's just this one. So, everything else, though, around it and the way that it's executed is really, really good. It's really smooth, really nice, really functional. Second ergo, well, not second ergos, but first of the ergo actual issue is, well, I'll come back to the clip now, and you can kind of see it. This part of the clip's fine, no problem. Why they had this part of the clip go back down when it's already so close to the bottom of the blade or handle, I don't know. Typically, pocket clips on knives want to be centered on the handle. Whether they're straight, curved, or whatever, as you can see, it centers itself. Because if it rides the spine, it's uncomfortable. If it rides the bottom, it can be uncomfortable. Not usually as uncomfortable as it riding the spine, but it can be uncomfortable. This one is not uncomfortable because the pocket clip is executed extremely well. It is nice and soft, very, very comfortable, there's no sharp edges, no pokiness to it. In fact, it's better than some clips that I have been seeing in that regard. However, their decision to arc it back down and leave it so close to the bottom of the handle means it's noticeable in the hand. Not uncomfortable. This is not an issue. Like I said, there are two issues that I think need to be changed. This is an issue that should be changed and could be better, but this isn't make or break. This is just, it's noticeable. It's touching into parts of my palm that I don't necessarily want, that are a little bit distracting. Especially when you're holding it in this position. Not as much the choke up, but the choke up's got its own issues. However, yeah, I'd like to see that changed a little bit. Just arc it up instead. It should be fine. What's not fine is the choke up position. The choke up position, you can probably see, has hard edges. The chamfers that work here, even though they're kind of hard, the actual distance and the size of the chamfers are tightly packed. Or I should say the chamfer is small, so it creates quick transitions, which creates a sort of rounding effect. This one, not so much. You've got this big area, and you've got a very hard edge to interface with. And when you're just holding in your hand, you think, okay, that's fine. Your initial instinct is saying that's fine. But let's be honest, unless you're cutting paper, most people don't use their knife like that. They put a little pressure on the spine, they grip a little bit tighter here, because that's where your grip strength comes from, and they might pull a little bit tighter to create a secure hold on the knife, especially if you're going through something like thicker than cardboard or standard cardboard. That's what you're doing. And guess what? And I do that. Let's squeeze down real hard, and yeah, you can kind of see what's going on here. These are sharp. In fact, reasonably sharp. They need to be knocked down for a much more comfortable choke-up position. In fact, I don't really like the choke-up position on this knife most of the time, unless you're just sort of like barely finger trigger pulling it with just like first knuckle. It's mostly okay there. But if you're gripping into this thing and like when you're regularly just holding the knife, yeah, it gets old pretty quickly when you're actually doing the cutting. When you're just holding in hand, it's not as noticeable. But change that. Maybe change that. Definitely make theirs stronger. Those are the weak points of this knife. Have to be mentioned. This knife is $78, 76 somethings, or 78 something along those lines. I draw the line for budget knives at 75. This one is right on the bubble. It is. I usually give a little bit of a grace. It's right in between. And yes, contemporary competitors will be a little bit cheaper. But interesting design, smaller company. You know, it makes sense, the price. It does. It's definitely bringing stuff to the table. The execution is definitely top tier for budget knives. It's just, there's a few strange or poor final choices in certain aspects of this thing that drags it down a little. Other than that, it's a really good knife, and again, really deserves a V2. I like it. I like what Molsect's doing. I'm definitely one to support their company. I like them. I like the idea of everything. And they didn't send these knives to mine, but I bought these knives. I haven't interacted with them, so I guess I shouldn't say I like them, but I like what they're doing. You can check out their Instagram if you care. I might link that down below. I have an Instagram too if you care to check that out. It's just basically if you watch my shorts, you pretty much see what's on my Instagram. I don't know how to make a bigger Instagram than that. I'm new to that sort of stuff, so I think I'm going to end things here because I've covered everything. This is a little bit longer than some summaries, but there are some things that definitely need to be talked about. However, it's a distinct, cool design knife that isn't doing anything that poorly that I can say it's not good. It's just, yeah, I think there are some objective improvements that can be made with this thing, so. Oh, one final thing I forgot to mention. This is kind of unfortunate. A crossbar lock is an ambidextrous locking system, but this knife is not equipped with a reversible pocket clip. One side only, so unfortunately, they are kind of missing something that is an obvious good for left-handed people kind of element to this thing that really is just should probably be there, let's be honest. That's all I wanted to say. Do what you will with this information. I hope it helped either way, and I hope you continue having a good day. I think I'm done. See you later. Molsect Shuttle is finished.